I know Jacinta from a support group that we both belong to in the past year. And I've never met Mark, but I've read the story in The Guardian a couple weeks ago. And what I've observed here is the extreme emotional outpouring of love on their behalf toward their parents. And that, I think, is one of the characteristics that folks who go through this caregiving process generally discover in themselves. A great deal of power that resides within us. I discovered that in myself as well, even though after 45 years of marriage, I'd never thought I had lost it. But it grows exponentially as time goes by with your loved one. 10 years ago, I never thought that I would be here either, and nor did I think Eileen would end up in a nursing home. Maybe I'm too close to that speaker. However, about the year 2000, Eileen started to lose her ability to speak. She was grappling for words that just were not there any longer. And I discovered that there must have been something either that was in the family history or that she was herself experiencing from a medical perspective. Strokes were prevalent in her family, and so we just attributed it to that. Finally, after a number of incidents similar to the ones that we've heard here, I convinced Eileen that we should have her tested. So our family doctor did the necessary diagnosis, and of course it was Alzheimer's. That was 2005. We weren't happy with that diagnosis. In fact, Eileen called the doctor a liar, and she called me a bastard. Probably both are true to some extent. 2 years later, she was then diagnosed with primary progressive aphasia, which is a form of dementia not unlike Alzheimer's, with the exception that she's speechless, she's mute. So now she's in the Prince Edward home, where she has been for almost 2 years. And the struggle for us now is not so much to deal with the disease itself, but to deal with the future. And as caregivers, as we've heard, the process involves not just my wife or their parents, but all of us as family. There is a resident in the nursing home where Eileen is, who every day says probably 1,000 times, the most important thing in life is a happy home. I think it was probably the 10,000th time that I heard it, that it registered. She's right, happy home. That's all it is. This is a happy home. It's not so much that it's as good as it gets, as Jack Nicholson says. It does get better. And the reassurance that I can suggest to you is ethereal. It's not something that you can actually put your finger on or experience in an explicit way. It's very tacit. It's a sensation that you live through rather than experience in a way that embosses its reality in your mind. And it's so fleeting. It'll be there 1 minute, and next thing you know, it's gone. And you go away happy. So where does that happiness come from with Alzheimer's or dementia, generally speaking? Most of us would say it comes from within, and I believe that is the case. You have to give yourself over, it seems to me, to the reality of this disease and accept it for what it is. There's still a great deal of high quality of life, of living, left in all of us who are going through the process of dealing with dementia. It's for that reason, perhaps some of you have heard me say this before, that I don't refer to this as a journey. A journey implies a destination. It implies an end. I might see it perhaps as a pilgrimage, which is like a journey. There is no end. When you get there, there's always another stage, another step, another tomorrow, another future, particularly with your loved one. You might also consider it as a quest. And now that is the way that I do look at it. I am looking for something beyond the reality of today, beyond the now that we are living. A journey tends to give it parameters that I can't really accept intellectually or even in any other cerebral manner. Even my emotions won't accept the fact that this is a journey. There is no end. So once I've resigned myself to that fact, I can embrace what comes next with happiness, with joy. And one of the reasons I like to do that is so that I can present myself to Eileen in a happy, contented, comforting way when I visit her every day. I feed her every day. She can no longer feed herself. In fact, about 2 weeks ago, she was finally confined to a wheelchair. She can no longer walk. So I walk with her every day to keep her blood circulating, to keep her muscles going, to prevent atrophy. And I know there will come a day when even that will not be allowed for her own safety. Then where do I find happiness? I can find it by touch, by looking at her in the eye. About a week ago, I walked in to the nursing home and I went into her room to take off my coat and get ready to feed her. And I could see 40 feet away, she was looking at me. And she waved. She actually recognized me. She waved from 40 feet away. I waved back. And then she did this. Wow, we're communicating. No words, just a smile and a wave and happiness. So what I take from all of this is that, yes, there's the structure to the disease. And the more we know about it, the sooner perhaps that we will find a cure. That is great. But in the today and the now, there are other, what would we call, conventions perhaps, strategies that we can adopt. And they come from within. They come from what you already know of yourself, of your loved one, your parent, your child, your aunt, your uncle, whoever it is. We've got to tap into that. We've got to exploit it. We've got to bring it back to where it was as children, as parents, as participants in that happy home. Eileen used to joke about me as a professor. I knew everything, which of course is true. She actually put me through school. We got married here in PEI in 1969. We went out to Calgary. She worked. We had children. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had very, very little education. And one day she took me aside and said, "You know what, John? You don't know everything. Knowledge isn't everything. Understanding is much more important than knowledge." It's amazing how you can learn the simplest things in life from the simplest words. She was absolutely right. You can have as many PhDs as you like, but you may not necessarily have what goes along with it. And empathy certainly is one of those things, and love and care and devotion. So one day I'm in my class, I'm teaching poetry, and who should walk in but Eileen and one of her Irish friends. And they sit at the back of the classroom. And I think, oh Jesus, here comes trouble. So I started to interpret, as we call literary exegesis, one of the poems. And I heard this, "No, John, no, John," from the back of the room. Eileen, of course, is a typical jokester. And that's what she would say of me all the time when she disagreed with me. "No, John." I would only be halfway through a story. And if "no, John" was in the air, it was time for me to stop talking. So we used to joke that on my gravestone is going to be, "Here lies Eileen McPherson Flood and no John." Actually, I'm a book publisher also, and one of the earliest books that I published is a book by Arthur Black called Basic Black. You may have heard his show on radio. And one day he was interviewing this fellow from Britain who was asked to go through the graveyards in England and come up with some of the most interesting little epitaphs. And one of them was, "Here lies John Flood, atheist, going nowhere." So when Eileen heard this, she said, "Well, why don't we put that on your gravestone too?" The point of all this now is, as you see, I'm a little bit lighter in the approach that I take to Alzheimer's and to dementia and to the disease. Partly because I don't see it as a journey. I see it as a process we all live through, whether it's heart disease, Alzheimer's, doesn't really matter. Of course it does. The purpose, though, is to take advantage of the support structures available to us so that we can live through this experience in a positive and nurturing way. Yes, there's a lot of anger. Yes, there's a lot of hurt. But we can deal with that. Thank you very much.